Welcome to another episode of Random Thoughts with Julito. Um, I, I I can't say how excited I am. I say it every episode, so I'm just gonna keep saying when an episode starts that I am excited. But I'm extremely excited today. I have a dear friend of mine, one of the most thought-provoking dudes I know. Like and I'm sure once y'all know who it is, you'll be able to attest that. My boy, he's an entrepreneur, an author. Some people call him the heart healer. My guy Rob Hill Sr. is in the building. Rob, what's up, my brother?
What's going on, man? Happy to be here. Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, anytime, my brother, anytime. Before we start and go through the journey, I just want to know, how are you? How are you doing? 2020, we were just talking about it, but 2020 is a year where it's probably one of the most unexpected years we've experienced as a culture, as a country, as a generation. How you been this year, man? How's 2020 been for you?
It's you know, when we were kind of offline, I answered with the word resilient, and
Hmm.
I'll stick with that. I think 20 has been a year of fortitude.
Yeah.
And that's mental toughness, that mental strength. And
Hmm.
I think that it has been, I'd already had some goals when the year started, and I launched a book in January.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was prepared for the process of the year, but all of those things changed. And it was really just about adapting. But I
Hmm.
chose the word resilience just because I now that it's December, and I can
Hmm.
look back on the year with some context. I saw many quote unquote breaking points,
Yeah.
and what I did was break through each one of them. So I'm
There
thankful.
we go. There we go. Yeah, I think us as black people, especially, we were built for this. Unfortunately, right? Because, I grew up in the projects. Many people I know grew up in poverty. Um, Resilience is like our middle name. You know what I'm saying? Resilience is something that, even though we don't choose it per se, we adapt to it. And 2020 for me has been a year of, like you said, resilience, man. And I think what's beautiful about 2020, Rob, is that we've been able to like grow in a very specific way. We've been able to like, there's so many people who are doing those, what do you call it, the do it yourself projects. Like, I learned how I took my DJing to another level. I done made things, I done built things with my hands. It's such a, like, right, like, things that I wouldn't have expected that I would have done. And I'm sure the same for you. So yeah, 2020 is resilient, but resilience is not new to you, and resilience is like your calling, in my opinion. That's when I read up on your story, when I read your books, I often experience you as a resilient person. But there are people who, if they don't read your books, if they don't, if they don't follow every single thing you do, they may not know who you are. So I want to start at the beginning, Rob. Growing up in Chesapeake, Virginia, shout out VA, two up, two down. Growing up in Chesapeake, Virginia, what was life like for you, um, as a young kid, and coming into like an adult? What was life like for you?
It was um it was awesome. It
Mm,
was awesome, man. I grew up in the '90s, and
mm-hmm.
I could remember listening to Tupac on the bus on the way to
Yeah.
school. I could remember um, hairstyles and jokes, yo mama joke. I can remember being at the bus stop. I can remember just a different time of life. And
Mm,
my mom was a young single mother, and she was grinding.
mm-hmm.
And I can remember the first time she bought her first like new car. It was a beautiful Sentra. It was like
Oh
a little
man,
dark green color, and
the Centras, man.
she got a spoil on the back, and we used to call it a fan. And I just remember her riding down the street, honking the horn, being proud of herself.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my sister wanting to wear her hair down, and my mom being
Mm-hmm.
like, "Nope." Uh, you know, I remember family. Pop up football. I remember, you know what I mean, like basketball with the crate on the side of the garbage can. I just remember being outside and being around and learning dance moves.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm. That's my childhood because I
yeah,
grew up as a dancer. So
playing tag, being knuckleheads, playing high and go get it, right? Being ridiculous.
manhunt.
Yeah, man. Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all the things about childhood. I remember that. I remember being encouraged to be an athlete. I remember being encouraged to trust myself and my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember moving a lot. So yes, we
Right.
started off. My mom was single mother, but um, she got married in like 96, 95,
Mm-hmm.
and she married my stepfather Frank, who is just one of the most incredible men, that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And we started moving around a lot. So I went to about, so say from kindergarten to 12th grade, I went to 11 schools, right? So I lived not just in Chesapeake, but I lived in Virginia Beach. I lived in Raleigh, North Carolina. I lived in San Pedro, California. I lived in like Monmouth County, New Jersey. I lived in Baumholder, Germany. That's where I did my freshman
Wow.
year of high school.
You
And
you
also,
did your freshman year of high school in Germany.
yes, sir, yes, sir. And then so what was growing up like if you combine that childhood with all of that moving, which is I did a lot of outside everywhere. So um, I played football in Cali, basketball in Cali, learned how to skateboard, learned some roller hockey, right? Bought my first pair of Vans or some stuff,
Oh yeah.
right?
She knows.
Yeah, yeah. And then, you know, in New Jersey, I was wearing the 5XTs, you know what I mean? And whatever was in back then. And then, you know, just being immersed in a lot of different experiences was my childhood. I was taught
Right.
by many different teachers, as you can tell by being in
Mm-hmm.
so many different schools. I
Mm-hmm.
learned around so many brilliant people, as you can tell from being in so many different schools.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also learned in dynamic environments, as just from being a military family.
Mm-hmm.
So it was it was fun. It was fun growing up. It was fast. It was it was a childhood. It was a childhood,
Yeah.
right? And I remember it as something that constructed me.
Mm.
It was some L's in there. I got jumped a couple times, fell off my bike. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
spray paint the side of the building. My mom got fined. Uh, it was some times in there,
Yeah.
but resilient.
Yeah.
I survived it all.
Yeah, you spoke about your stepdad. I also grew up with my stepdad. My biological father passed away when I was 2. I grew up with my stepdad, and he is also one of the greatest men I know on the planet. So we share that. I think a dad that steps in and takes the father role to children is like it's beautiful, man. That's just beautiful. Um, but you talked about, so he was in the military. You guys moved around. Then you became a young adult, and then you joined the Navy,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
what is there something during the time where you were in the Navy that you learned that you use to this day?
Oh, sure. Um, is that I can be good at even things I hate.
Mm.
Um, I learned that how you do one thing is how you do everything,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I learned that um, my personal standard, that integrity when nobody else is around,
Mm.
what counts more than anything.
Mm. Say
And
X and
I
do
learned,
X.
being willing to stand on that in difficult times is not something everybody has had the chance to cultivate.
Mm.
So even the things I hate, I can be good at.
Yeah. What was your choice with you joining the Navy? What was that like?
Man, I was so after all of that moving, um, there was a little bit of resentment in me. You
Mm.
know, I think a couple years ago, I was telling my parents like, I went to 11 schools before we got a decrease, and they was like, no, you didn't. What? And I'm like, y'all my parents. Like,
They probably forgot at this point because
yeah.
it didn't affect them as much as it
I mean, and
affected
they have
you.
5 kids. It's several people, but
Mm.
I just fell into some years, right?
Right.
Um, but I, you know, I wasn't following their rules to the best of my ability,
Mm-hmm.
and I was feeling like I just wanted some control over my life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So they kicked me out a few weeks after graduation, and I was like just kind of on my own until school started in the fall, and I went to Norfolk State for a few, but I was working a full-time job,
Mm-hmm.
and really, bro, my life was like just going out. Um, Working this job, that job. Like I worked at Holiday Inn, a cell phone kiosk store. I worked at this place called ASI. I'm doing like stuff for General Electric. I worked
Mm.
barber shop. I worked in Target. I worked at Walmart for a couple of weeks. I worked at Rallies, flipped some burgers.
Goddamn.
Um, I did a lot of jobs in that little period of time. But I also threw parties. Like I was just like trying to get it.
Mm.
And I still was broke, right? And I found out I was gonna be a father, and I was still like trying to be a college student, but I wasn't like being that good. I wasn't that good at it, right? Like I
Yeah.
wasn't close to getting a scholarship that was gonna help me pay for the school that I already couldn't pay for.
Yeah.
So it was like all the men that I had seen in my life who had taken care of their families, who had like had a little bit of extra,
Mm-hmm.
maybe had been somewhere outside of 757 in my area, they
Mm-hmm.
were in the military, right? Or they worked at the shipyard, or they was drug dealers, or they was an athlete, right? So those
Right.
like big four. So I'm like, well, I got a baby. I'm not good at none of these jobs. I don't do any of these jobs. Um, and none of them are going to put me in a position of where I'm taking care of my child comfortably,
Right.
right? In a way that I wouldn't judge myself.
Right.
So I joined the Navy, and also it was a double thing. I joined. So my son was born in January 2008. I joined in April of 2008. But in that time, we had realized that he would need like a cosmetic surgery. So when I went to the recruiter, I wanted to make sure that they would pay for the surgery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he was getting it at CHKD, and it was going to be expensive. So they said they would. So I signed up quickly.
Oh, there you
Uh,
go.
I didn't just stop showing up at the job I was at, and then I tried to somewhat finish out the semester. I don't even remember what I did, but um, and I was out. I was out. I was out. First day of boot camp was April 23rd, 2008. So I had a 4-month-old, and I went to boot camp, went to A school, got out in like August. He had his surgery in September, like 2 weeks before my 21st birthday.
Wow.
It was like $150,000-$200,000 surgery, and I didn't have to pay anything. Now, naturally, I was in a contract for 4 years in the
Right.
military, but um, it was paid for, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and my son is a handsome young man who's on the brink of straight A's, as I said.
Yeah.
And we at the time the fear was that his brain development would be impacted because the syndrome was called craniosynostosis. So basically, his head was growing like a football and not a basketball. In simple terms.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah. Two bones were like fused together, so they had to create another one in the fourth quadrant, I believe.
Oh
I'm not
man.
trying to talk too medical, but you can.
Nah, I dig it. That's such a blessing to see him now, and how, like you said, straight A, on the brink of straight A's.
Yeah,
Listen, for me, that's straight A's. Cause on the A, if somebody ever said I was on the
I,
brink of straight A's as a kid, Listen, I was doing a whole lot better than everybody else in my neighborhood.
You survived it. Look, I don't know if you can see it's a little video. I had a bottle, so I'm full. This him after surgery. I was doing a good job eating.
Wow. If y'all can't see, Rob is showing me a video of his son. Wow.
Oh, sorry, I don't know if it's just audio, but yeah, this is like when he was healing. But yeah, it's my boy. He was going through it.
Mm. And now, what did you learn during that process? I mean, that must have been tough on you as a young father, watching your youngin, go through it. What was that like? What was that like for you?
Wow, life had been so fragile. You know, I lost my best friend when I was in college. He was 19, I was 18. And I was like living really fast. As I said, I worked a lot of different jobs, but I was also like not probably taking the best care of myself, you know? And when my son was born, I knew a lot needed to change. But the biggest part was like that feeling of self-worth, right? Like that you have something to offer. I was just bouncing around everywhere, barely having any money, not really in touch with my family, and not doing well in school. So not feeling like I had much to offer, and I talk about the first time our eyes connected when he was born January 19th, I felt shame, like his was just pure love. And I knew he loved me because of the way he looked at me, but I felt shame. Like I felt like I wanted to run and hide, right? And I just knew that I was like going to be committing the rest of my life to changing that feeling, right? You want to have peace when you look in your child's eyes, and you want to reflect a love, a welcoming presence, right? Not a I'm scared of you presence. So it was terrifying for me because when I saw him laying in the hospital bed, I remember having a conversation with my mom. I'm on the left side of the bed, she's on the right, and my son was in that condition on, tubes in him and, fresh scars because they had to open up his head from behind his left ear all the way across to his right ear. So he has a cut going like that all the way across. Wow. So I looked up at her and but it was like a thing in the pit of me that it's very hard to articulate, but I said, so I looked at my mom and I'm like, so this what love feel like? And she was like, yeah. Yeah. I knew everything in me wanted us to switch places. My son could not cry. He couldn't open his mouth. His face was swollen. His cry was a deep moan, something that angered me, right? I didn't have the answer for that. And all you can do is just have patience and trust that God is a healer and that he created our bodies with some specific genius DNA that can repair itself stronger than it would before. And it was I knew life was fragile before. The CHKD hospital is literally within 30 feet of the hospital that my best friend died in, So I was in an interesting space, right? But it was just like, nah, boy, you staying here with me, and you gonna fight through this, and we're gonna have us a good life. And I bet everything on that, and that was just my attitude. So yeah, it changed me because I knew like losing you changes me. It was so new, 9 months. This is before you even get a chance to walk. Like life coming at you, like it was a different experience.
That's first off, you gave me chills just listening to this. I lost my best friend as well when I was when I was a little younger, and it's so interesting how life have so many similar parallels. Where my daughter, it wasn't that, right, but my daughter had a really bad asthma when she was born, and we also were in the hospital, and I think I didn't have a moment where I discovered what love was. It took me a few years, meaning not too long ago, to understand what I think love is, right? But when you have a child, I think you then start to look at life in a different way. You then start to look at life from a different perspective. And it's interesting that you don't know the idea of what you thought love was prior to the moment you have a child. It completely shatters, and now it's readjusted. Right, when you have a child, it's now like, this is love, and this is what love should look like, right? Because I even think about it with my children. Like, my daughters, they 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 don't want anything from me, right? Like, they don't want anything from us. They just love us. Like, we didn't buy them a nice thing, so now they love us. We didn't, you know, we didn't do anything out of the, like, special for them to love us, but they do anyway. And that's a beautiful thing. With you being a dad, right, and a young father. I was also a young father, but with you being a young father, often we have conversations around what we teach our children, right? But being a parent, a young parent, sometimes you're a kid having a kid, right? So I ask you, what do you think your son taught you?
Wow, so many things. So many things. I try to remind him of the things that he teaches me year
Hmm.
year. Um, my son, man, he he taught me that my self-worth is not transactional.
Mm,
He taught me that love needs no qualifiers. It is just because it is.
that's it.
He taught me like the true fruit of showing up, you know? Like it's the most consistent job I've ever had.
Yes,
It's the
yes.
best thing I've ever contributed to.
Mm,
It is the most authentic opportunity that I've been presented with.
mm,
And to know the way he trusts me is shit. That joint break me down, bro. Because
yeah.
because I got him, you
Mm,
know? I
mm-hmm.
got him, more than I ever had myself. And here's the key. I told you my self-worth was very low
Yeah.
before. It is higher than it's ever been because you can't teach somebody to love and operate healthily in this world without doing that work yourself.
Yeah.
Right? I always say you got to be solid to test integrity. And ultimately, being solid, the fruit of showing up every day, reading to you, field trip with you, homework with you, learn how to dribble with you, shoe tie with you, brush
Mm-hmm.
your teeth with you, flex first muscle with you, push ups with you, lunch with you, breakfast with you, just walking and talking about nothing with you. Um, living with you, existing, like seeing you get frustrated about your first friend argument and teaching you how to scream into the night. You know what I mean? To release that and letting you know, like, yeah, the world might get startled if you scream a little bit later in your life. But right now, you exercise your voice as loud as possible, and let all that out that we don't know how to articulate. Like just I don't know, man. My son teaches me to be alive, but also to take life seriously. I take life serious.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
play about this, Like I don't. This ain't for play for me, and I ain't just dancing. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
ain't just
You're
out.
in the game.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
ain't just out here. So my son teaches me all of that, and to trust my heart. Before I might try to put some ego in front of that, I might try to put some pride in front of that, or some performance in front of that, and I don't need any of it anymore
Mm,
because I already picked me. You know,
mm,
and now I'm just letting the world experience that choice.
yeah. That's the thing about self-worth. I actually had to learn it not too long ago. Um, you don't need anybody to validate you or to tell you that you matter.
Yeah,
Once you decide you matter, that's it,
sure.
right? And it just so happens that our children are usually some of the first people, and they're what I'll say is they're some of the first people who we listened to, right? Because I've had a lot of people in my life up until I was a father that would speak life into me, speak love into me, but I didn't have the ears to listen to them. You know what I'm saying? And then I had children, and then I realized, oh, life is way bigger than you, bro.
Yeah.
It's way bigger than you.
Yeah.
So you were in the Navy. You're moving around. You're a young father now. You have a child at 20.
Mhm.
What was the decision like for you to jump into the life you live in the career you're in now, right? Um, there was points where you sold books out of your trunk,
Mhm.
right? Where you self-publish. What was that transition like into the Rob Hill Senior we know now?
It was one of the best rides a person can take. You
Mm,
know, I man, I so there's three level of I guess convincing, right? There's or I guess of getting something out there. So there's arguing, persuading, and convincing.
mm,
And as young black men, we spend so much of our life trying to convince ourselves that our voice matters.
mm-hmm,
That if we speak it out to the world, we'll be heard, acknowledged, maybe supported, right? And there was a time where I thought my voice wasn't really worth much, and I
mm-hmm,
thought that maybe talking to me didn't have much value. But I always believed myself to be smart. I always believed myself to be useful, right?
right.
So when I did have a conversation, I would at least want to maybe teach something or ask a question that led me to learning something.
Mm-hmm,
And that quality has been with me since I was a young child, right? A
right.
very young child. I wasn't the kid that was scared to talk to older adults. I was the kid that they was probably like, you're talking to an adult, right?
Right.
uh, so um, I I wasn't doing very well before I joined the Navy, and I did very well in the Navy. I promoted up. I made E5 in like less than 2 years. I had early promoted my evaluations. I
Mm-hmm,
had like my aviation warfare. I had some other pins. Like I was doing what I needed to do. I had did two combat deployments. And again, like I said, my lesson from there is that I can be good at even at things that I hate. So I did not enjoy it per se,
right.
right? But I performed, right? So my goal was that if I could work at this place like 16, 17-hour days, 72 days straight, only stop on land for 3 days, then go back out there for another 65 to 70, only stop on land for
Mm-hmm,
2 days, then go back out there for another. And literally, there's no days off when you're on the boat. So you working every day. They say 12 on, 12 off, but
yeah.
y'all
Okay.
know that there's things, right? And there's no going home. There's no private time. There's no alone time. There's no away from your coworkers, away from that boss. No, is it. So I thought that if I was to get another shot at school, now I have a GI Bill, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna take 2 years, get a degree, right? And then I'm gonna be a professional speaker and a writer and an author, right? So I released my first book in 2011, right? September. So I had about 9 months left in my contract. Right? Yeah, 6 or 7 months left in my contract. I released my second book. I got out in April 2012. I released my second book in May of 2012. So a
Mm,
month after I got out. So I've been working on it, right? So I'm thinking like, all right, these two books, and then I'll get in college. So I went to a community college, TCC.
yeah.
I'll get in college. I'll take a speaking course, right? And then I'm gonna do this. So everybody will be like, all right, that sounds good, but what's gonna be your real plan? because
Mm.
you finally making some money now. It's been consistent. You haven't asked nobody for money in years. You got benefits, but like, what's gonna be a real thing, right? Um, but that was my real plan, man. That was just it was just in me to do. And so, what was that like? It was a combination of learning to trust my voice, choosing to use my voice,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then being bigger than that, listening, right? Once I sent the messages out into the world. So I started with, a blog like MySpace, sharing them on MySpace.
Yep.
I moved it to Facebook Notes, right? And then I moved it from there to like a blog spot in like 2007, right? And
Wow.
then from there, I moved it to an email list in 2008. So by then, I have like 22 readers, right? People who kind of know me as a writer
Yeah.
or like willing
Listen,
to
that's all you need.
a lot
22
of
of them.
family friends in there, maybe some, some other friends, but it was very small, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward from 2008 to 2011, I committed to this series called Thoughts for the Day while I was in the Navy or way. And it was just a simple email list where I would send out like 10 lines about forgiveness, doubt, whatever the topic was. And I sent it out every morning by 9:30. So I did that every day for 3 years. And on the end of that 3 years, I had about 3 to 4 thousand people on my email list, right? So what happened is that every day I kept showing up, people kind of started counting on it, and they started giving me a shot,
Mm-hmm.
So the first couple times it's like, what is Rob sending me? Like, you don't even talk like this, or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they understood, what I was willing to voice through ego, not necessarily what I was
Yeah.
had in my heart,
Right.
right? And I was gaining that confidence,
Mm. To be
naturally.
you.
Yeah, and dealing with the separation of being away from my son, but just understanding, like, man, if somebody was to bomb this boat right now, what would I be having that he could know, like his dad thought? Like,
Mm.
I would just be having my younger story of jail and being kicked out and dealing with stupid stuff. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So at this point, it just became very important to me. So, like, people would send it to their coworkers, they would send it to friends. It just became forwarded, right? It was not
Yeah.
like a market; it was just a thing. So that led me to releasing my book in 2011. So fast forward, I've kept that same formula, right? Not necessarily with a newsletter, but interacting with my readers on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Doing so has taken me and my mom to South Africa. It has put me on New York Times Magazine.
Mm.
It has left me with the lights out some months.
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's had me touring on stages. I've done well over 300 speaking engagements. It's had me speaking on stages at universities that would have never accepted me back in
Mm.
the day. Back in the day, it's had me publishing books, helping other people publish books. It's had me, showing up for friends, being able to support teachers. And I was 20, 25, 26, and I gave out $10,000 to 10 young students. So, $1,000 each to 10 young students,
Yeah.
10,000 total. But it was an impactful thing. It was for my community. And it was just a chance to, inspire, impact, and influence others. So when I try to put that journey in from like, the day I decided to get out of the Navy to now, there's really, no simple way to put it other than it's just persistence, man. It's I believe that if I learn enough, that I will be able to share enough helpful things in the world. I
Yeah.
believe that if I live by certain principles, those principles will demonstrate an example that leads to other people maybe leading by those principles, right?
Yeah.
It's just my chance to share and record everything um, that is out here, and to break all of this down, right? And I know I'm talking a lot, but
No,
I put it in context.
this is a podcast, Rob. You are talking exactly as much
Oh,
as you're
good. I
supposed
got to
to.
put it in context. So in 1996, my mom did. 95, my mom got married. In 1996, she self-published her first book,
Mm.
right? So in 1997, I was like 12 years old, 11 years old at the Los Angeles Convention Center for the Black Expo. We had a booth, and I was learning how to sell books and communicate with readers. I was learning how to stop somebody with a bookmark in my hand and try to get their attention long enough to get them to my mom's book, like to my mom's
Booth.
the booth, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's been in me. I saw my mom doing it independently very early. And then you know who was one of the biggest artists in the world during this time? Master
Right.
P.
Master. Come on now.
So I was
Come
like,
on
man,
now.
I was so I've published 7 out of 8 of my works have been independent. I've only done one with a major publisher, and I didn't do that till 2018. Right.
Exactly.
So, and I don't plan to do it again because I've started my own publishing company now. But it's so where it's a completely different place than where I am now, but it's the same place because I'm a student trying to apply what he's learned so that I can be good at my mission.
Yeah.
And my mission is to be a messenger, to provide some comfort in this calamitous world. Like it's simple. It's
Simple.
alarm clock wisdom, you know.
Man, yo, it's usually when a person like you moves how you move. We talk about hustle and drive and those qualities. But what I'm hearing is it all started with you caring enough about your words and worth to give it to somebody else. Because you can only have the hustle if you believe in yourself. You can only have the drive if you care enough about your content or the way you create to give it to somebody else, right? And I love the fact that you lead with worthiness, because there's sometimes, especially as men, where we may lose. We Society has it where men don't need to give a fuck about how much they're worth. They don't, per se, right? If
That's
you
his dollar value, bro.
right? Like, we are only as valuable as what we do rather than who we are. And I look at it as, if you are on the planet, you're worthy. Simple.
Mhm.
Period. Right? So I love that's what you lead with. You know what I'm saying? You got this quote where you say, "We are all one choice away from a completely different life." And I think that's priceless. What choice do you think that you made that has you live the life you live right now?
Self-acceptance.
Mm.
Self-acceptance. It was a decision. It's like, all right, so you can't go to 11 schools and be on trend in all of them. Like what's on trend in California is not the same in New Jersey. It's not the same in North Carolina. It's not the same in Virginia. It's not the same in Germany. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be yourself. You can't try to blend in or pretend. You new. You're different.
Yeah.
Who are you? And I got very comfortable showing up as myself, and I'm still very comfortable with that to this day. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not looking at anybody else's journey and thinking, ah, that's where I should be. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
should be doing. No, no, I am where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I think for me, it just was that self acceptance. It's like it's me in the road. You know, it's me in the road. It really is. When I was um, in just much different times, man. When I was, I talk about it in my book, The Missing Piece. I was in jail for a little bit in Virginia Beach City Jail, and I remember sitting in that cell. I remember thinking like, man, nobody would expect you to be here,
Mm.
right? Like nobody would believe that you did X to be here, right? And you know, yeah, but what do you believe about you, Robert? Because obviously, what you believe led you here.
Mm.
So it doesn't really matter you trying to control everybody else's thoughts about you, thoughts about your life. How are you valuing it?
Mm.
How are you showing up for it? You know? And it was that self acceptance that I wasn't gonna be able to duck none of these days. I was gonna have to live them all individually.
That's
I
it.
have to do every rep, and I was
Mm-hmm.
gonna have to put one step after each other. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, that was the most gratifying thing along the way.
Yeah. yeah, it's when I saw your bio, when I thought of that quote, I thought like, yeah, it is one decision. Literally, there are people who are out here who are probably way better rappers than Jay-Z, right? Way more athletic than LeBron James. Uh, Greater actors than Denzel and speak better than, you know, any motivational speaker. Tony Robbins, right? It's one decision that can have them be completely different or live a completely different life. And, you know, the moment that you decide that you don't want the life that you're living, that is when you change shit. You know, for me, I had to. I'm still in those decisions though, and I think that's the key about it is like we're not baked cakes. We're
Yeah.
not like finished. Like we're not done.
Right.
Like you got to look at every single aspect and every single opportunity as a chance to grow. You know what I'm saying? And I'm still growing, and you know, and I can imagine you are as well. And we're never just done. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm learning every single day. Is like that we're not done. We are not, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. I
Nah.
tell myself that all the time because I'll have super highs and then I have really lows, really down lows, and I'm just like, but you're not done yet.
Yeah.
God got a
Sure.
plan.
A motto I live by like nowadays is enjoy growing. You know,
Mm,
two simple words, but it's a choice, man. You
mm-hmm.
know, and to enjoy growing, man, because it's a marathon,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
You see people who are up and having a year, and then you might see a video of them looking completely different 10 years ago, doing something completely different. You know, we have to stay in this game or stay in our posture long enough to be presented with the profits, the fruits, the presence, you know what I mean, the impact, right? And it's just like your shirt says, choose wisely.
Choose
You know,
wisely, man.
and that's the thoughts. That's the thoughts. Choose your thoughts wisely. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because if you give in to that thought that I'm done, or I this is a block and I can't go here, or this is my limit and I can't succeed that, then you lose. A Course in Miracles says, it says, God says, do not doubt yourself, or else you will doubt what I can do through you.
Mm.
And every time you doubt yourself, every time you limit yourself, you are then deciding that you can't be you,
Mm.
you know?
That's the
And
word, man.
you cap it off just from thinking that way, you know?
Mm. That's a word, man. A Course in Miracles. Please read it. I was in a few book clubs that
Mm-hmm.
right before the pandemic we were reading A Course in Miracles and I couldn't
Yeah,
finish it,
yeah.
but I'm gonna finish it. Um, they call you the heart healer. Uh, I ask you what's the urge for you to want to support people in healing? And is there a moment where you felt like you needed your heart to be healed?
Yeah, every day,
Mm-hmm.
constantly in a healing process. I think that, you know, what's important for me is that people don't feel alone, that people
Mm,
don't feel like they have the inner tools to deal with the assignment on their life. I
mm,
think it's important for me that it says once you've been broken that you become an expert at mending. And
mm,
I feel like life has handed me several moments of severance. Like, dang, that's broken. Broken dream, broken expectation, broken reality, broken example, right? And I decided, like Tupac said, like, you know, it's only so long you can be talking about how dirty it is around here. Eventually, you gotta be the one to clean it up,
clean it up.
you know. So for me, with mending is like, I got some power. I got some people to a party. I got some people to do this bad idea. I had some, you know what I mean? Like, let me
Mm-hmm.
decide that I can start a different conversation. Let me
Yeah.
decide that I could be about a different process, one that gives us longevity, one
Mm,
that comes with peace of mind,
mm,
right? One that wakes you up to bed with peace and lightness in your heart,
yeah.
right? So for me, healing is about that access to love, which is ultimately that space of unlimited freedom.
Mm.
So I want to help people get there.
Yeah. No, that's key. That is key, my brother. Just there's so many people out here who feel like they're like completely broken. And I don't believe anybody's broken per se. I just think that we've been through some shit.
Yeah.
But we're all there's always an opportunity for us to heal that shit so that we can get through it.
Yeah.
And we're not broken people, man. Anytime people be like, yo, there's so many people who talk to me and they're like, I'm broken. And I'm like, no, you are not. You're just going through an experience, but this too shall pass. You know what I'm saying? So I'm so happy that we have people like you out here that are intentionally healing, the planet, because that's it's what we need. So you are widely respected and loved for your Instagram quotes and Twitter quotes. Um, there are people who may not even know how you look, but they know the shit you say, which is it says a lot about the way you think and it says a lot about you. So I'm gonna go through a few of your tweets. You know what I'm saying? And I want you to tell me what is it that you think when you hear this. And this is shit you wrote, right?
Okay. Okay.
So let's go this one. It gets real when you start being specific about what's best for you.
I think about friendship. I think about relationship. I think about job negotiation. I think about contract negotiation. I think about business. I think about setting a standard for the way you're going to do things. I think about just biblically when it says write the vision down, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think things get real when you get in the details and you're specific about it,
Mm.
right? So I just, it's a jumble. Like, if you ready to get in a relationship and you being specific about your preferences or your knows, if you about to take on a new job or you taking on a new deal and you're being specific about this doesn't work for me, this does work for me. What you realize is that these are either pivot points or breaking points, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you're gonna see what it is at that moment.
Yo, I always tell people first date, first time you're with somebody might sound crazy. People may be like, Julito, what the fuck are you talking about? I say the very first time you have a date with a person, tell them exactly what you want. Exactly what you want. Because it's all a choice. They're either going to choose in. They're going to say yes or they're going to say I'll pass. But giving people an idea of what you're looking for and being specific, as you said, about like what it is you want. it, Listen, we gotta own our stuff, own what we want, own. It's not there shouldn't be any shame around it. There shouldn't be any. You shouldn't look down on yourself because of it. Own what you want. Simple.
100%, 100%.
You said, what do you do to heal you? What you do to heal yourself matters more than who hurt you. Where you're going matters more than what you came from.
Well, it's you have those people who start sentences off like, man, you don't know what I've been through, or
Mm.
but you don't understand they did X, but you don't understand my mom never, or my dad wouldn't, and we all have stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I am a firm believer that we are creators of fact. So what you do to heal yourself, what you do to build yourself, what you do to construct your self-conscious is way more important than the person who tried to tear it down. It's
Mm.
way more important than the system who tries to get you to believe that it's not valuable.
Mm-hmm.
It's way more important than that. They say obstacles are the things we see when we take our eyes off our goals. So
Mm.
what you do to heal yourself, healing is the goal. people will be obstacles if you take your mind off of your healing,
Mm,
because you're going to be convinced that they can break you. You're going to be
mm.
convinced that they can take from you. You're going to be convinced that they can steal and hurt you. But truth is, they can't hurt you without hurting themselves.
That's a fact.
And
And
ultimately, you know, I just think that focusing on the work is bigger than making the work about any one person. So the second part, what'd you say? It said where you're going.
it said, yeah, where you're going matters more than what you came from.
Yeah, yeah, and that's just again, it's the people who, like in boot camp, we would have this interesting thing where people would talk about like where they were from and how hard it was or whatever, right?
Hmm.
But they would be the same people like falling out of ranks, um, failing on the push-ups, um, messing up on simple cadences, so we would have to be repeating things and not remembering simple general orders, right?
Hmm.
And these people were trying to say that their experience had qualified them for the moment, but here they were bullshitting with the moment.
Mm,
Here they were not showing up for the moment. So why are
mm.
we talking about where you from then? Because you making it look bad right now. We need to be focusing on where you are and where you going, because that is something that you can lead example to. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm.
So it's just that focus for those people who are stuck in their past, right? We are creators of fact. What is ahead is yours to manifest. If you don't believe that, then you might as well not look ahead right now, right?
Hmm.
Because you are going to be convinced that that is somebody else's picture, that is somebody else's image, that is somebody else's thing, and you are not going to be satisfied with it. So, that's just my spill on it.
Yo, what I learned, Rob, is that people are comfortable in uh their past. They're comfortable in that. And the only word I can think of in this moment is like being that victim. They're comfortable in that. Sometimes they don't know who they are outside of that. You know what I'm saying? They don't know who they are outside of being healed. Excuse me, outside of not being healed. Outside of, they enjoy being in a space. And I hate to generalize, right? But there are people who enjoy being like broken. Like, I'm my story, and that's it.
Mhm.
I'm interested in like what's on the other side of your story. I'm also like, I give grace to it because I also understand like it's scary on the other side.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of people on the other side. There are not a lot of people that are like who've let go of their past and they're solely just about their healing. There are not a lot of people on the other side of like resilience or triumph, or there's just not a lot of people on that other side because of either resources or history, or right, like there are people who just tend to stay there, and I'm just like, nah, yo, we are made for greatness, and our greatness is not in our past, bro. Like, it may be, we may use what we got from the past, but our greatness isn't necessarily there. So yeah, it's really something to think about. And the last one you said, and I have to read it because it was so beautifully put. You said, it's beautiful when the one you love makes those "I heard you and I get it" type changes. What's your thoughts on that?
To me, that's just about thoughtfulness and consideration and maturity.
Mm,
And a relationship is an exchange of trades, and you don't want to have unbalanced and poor trades or predatory trades.
mm-hmm.
You want to have someone who is willing to trade fairly and freely with
Yeah.
some character, with some integrity, and with the same value that they've committed to.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're willing to hear me out and then make an adjustment, I think of that as an act of love. I think of that as
100%.
service. Um, and I think it's a beautiful gesture to be not just the one communicating what you want to be changed, but to be the one making that change, to be the one saying, I heard you, I got it. and
Mm,
I am going to do differently, and then to show up and do differently,
mm,
right? And it's not on some you see what I did, but just on some you deserve that treatment. I want to be good for you, you know.
mm.
And it's beautiful to have somebody who just wants to be that way.
Yo, I always say if you voice what you feel to your partner or you voice what you're going through to your partner and they either like frown upon it or they're like, yo, you just you always feel that way or you that says a lot, man. What you said is so deep about that's love when a person hears you. And this is the thing, you don't have to like agree with it, but solely because you say you're with this person and you're in love with this person, or solely because you're choosing partnership with this person, whatever you feel, I get to acknowledge it. You can acknowledge shit without without agreeing with it. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying? So
100%.
that post is like so spot on for me. But I don't want to keep you too long. But before we get out of here, we have to talk about your latest books that you have. You spoke a lot about it a little bit early on. Let's talk about The Missing Piece. It's your first book from a major publisher. Tell us about the title, where that come from, and what can we expect reading The Missing Piece?
The missing piece is a love journey, and the title kind of explains it. It's how I found the better parts of me,
Mm,
right? I like to say you can be flawed and still be cherished.
mm,
And the missing piece is a story of how I discovered the 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 experiences that led me to be able to articulate it that way.
mm,
It discusses my flaws. It discusses the way I view the world. It discusses some things that helped me change the way I view the world. It discusses the way I experience the world and how I interacted with people. It discusses some triumphs and some trials, and it um, it has grit.
mm,
It's a book that you just like, wow, this guy's still going. He's,
mm-hmm.
like he taking himself pretty serious.
Would you say it's a memoir or not necessarily?
No, it's a snapshot into about 10 years of my life, maybe from like 17 to like 27 or something like that.
Okay.
And it's just a peek into some lessons. I have been writing books and dropping projects, but none of them were necessarily about me. They were concept,
Hmm.
projects that were about ideas
Right.
and things that I believed. So it was a chance for me to, open up a little bit and let people know who's writing to them. As you see, you know, people will definitely interact with my words far before they interact with my face.
Hmm.
But that's because I actually take pride in being a writer.
There you go. There
I don't
you
need to
go.
be in people's face like Denzel Washington. I write words, right? And
Right.
if the
Right.
person who wrote his words isn't trying to show up on screen as much as he is.
100%.
So
And they get to your words are you.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't need to see your face to understand who you are, right? And I think
yeah.
that's the
And to
beauty
feel
about what you do.
right and to feel me. So um, yeah, that pretty much
Yeah.
sums it. Yeah,
And then you got your book of poetry, Hope for Love.
yeah. Hopefully,
Hopefully, I can't wait to read it. I just ordered it yesterday, actually. I can't wait to read it.
thank you.
So I gotta ask you: is there hope for love? I know I can imagine how many people ask you this, but is there hope for love for real?
Yeah, for sure, for
Mm-hmm.
sure, for sure. Um, that's the simplest answer. A better one would be how can you acknowledge that God is love and then give up on that? How could you acknowledge that God is inside you and then deny that love doesn't live there? Is there hope for love? Well, it comes back to the question: what do you believe about yourself? Do you believe that you can be someone with integrity? Do you believe that you can be someone who's faithful? Do you believe that you are willing to demonstrate loving service? Or do you just believe you can be romantic for a couple weeks, months? Do you really want to perform or do you want to experience? That is the choice when it comes to love. That's the choice that we all trying to figure out. We just dancing or we really feel this music, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's hope for love. You just gotta be willing to give it, to
That's
open
it.
up, to learn, to experience.
That's it.
That's it.
Before we get out of here, every week I have a random thought of the week. It's where I allow my supporters to pose a question to myself or my guests. It's either a question or it's a thought. This week, the question comes from Corey 25441610 on Twitter. These names of these social people on social media be out of this world, bro. But shout out Corey. She asks us, can you marry someone that you don't love?
Sure, you can do anything. You can do anything. Some cultures they say you can learn to love a person, right?
Yes.
There's some basic needs are there. So sure, so sure. We're like one of the first generations that is marrying for love.
Mm,
If you being
right.
realistically, uh,
Right.
Romeo and Juliet is a story of a generation who had to marry for economic purpose and they had to commit adultery for love.
Mm,
So we're just getting a chance to decide, oh, we're independent people and we can choose things for heartfelt reasons and not for what makes sense, right?
yeah.
So, well, excuse me, and not for just economic reasons because heartfelt reasons do make sense.
Right. Right.
Um, I think that it's important when you think of marriage to not just think of the exchange of love, but to be, as the great leader Dr. Miles Monroe says, to be a great applicant of knowledge or applier of knowledge, rather. Right? He says successful relationship is not the result of. He says successful relationship is the result of the application of knowledge, not the exchange of love. And when I think of marriage, from what I've heard, though it's not something I experienced intimately, from what I've heard, it's about how you apply what you know and when you apply what you know that keeps the person that you chose or keeps the relationship that you value um, together, right? And after a while, some people start knowing things and stop giving a F whether they apply it, you
Mm.
know. And then they say, "But you know, I love you." And
We
ultimately,
together already, right? We married.
and
Listen, we
ultimately,
here, right? We did it.
from what I hear, that's where the thing goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, like, yeah, you can marry somebody you don't love. Maybe love is not important to you. Maybe being, you know, I don't know, in Jamaica is important to you, and that person you want to marry lives in Jamaica. I don't know, like
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
marry for whatever reason. I think that mistaking a marriage for love is a elementary mistake. You
Mm.
know, because there are plenty loving relationships between people who are not married, and there are plenty marriages that lack a loving relationship with the individuals who sign the paper.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, yeah, and that's all about. I don't know a lot about marriage, man. I ain't even about to get up here acting like I do.
Listen,
No,
no,
no, marriage ain't in none of my books.
I dig it. I dig it. And neither is it's in mine. And I ain't write a book, but it's not in mine either. But to answer her question, I will say, I believe sure you can marry somebody you love, but is it gonna work? Highly doubt it. You know what I'm saying? And if I just thought of the question in more of like a minuscule way, where it's can you be with somebody you don't love? Um, yeah, because there are people who need things from people in a very specific way that may not necessarily be love they're needing, but maybe it's security, maybe it's comfortability. There are people who are with people just because they're comfortable, not necessarily because they enjoy it or they want to be in it, right? I think that's often why. And you spoke about it, like especially folks back in the day, they would be with people, and it was either, you know, because that's the way that the world was moving at that time. So it was like, all right, you need to be married by this specific time. If you're not, you failed, or right, like any reason of something like that. And now it's extremely different. It's now we don't need a person to necessarily. We don't need to be married at a specific time to be validated and to be shown that we matter. So, you know, times have changed, and that's just not where we are anymore. And at the same time, sure, you can be with somebody that you don't necessarily love, but that it just all goes down to what is it you need out of life.
Yeah, what you
And
want from a relationship.
yeah, what do you want? Like there are people who really don't need love. Like they've let it go for so long that they're just like, I don't need love. Just I just need somebody to cuddle with at night.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like I don't need love. I just need somebody to listen to me when I talk. You know what I'm saying? And and that's where it is, man. Yo, Rob, man, I'm so grateful for you, my brother. Thank you so much for saying yes to this. Thank you so much for your insight. Where can the people not they can find you from your name on every social media, but what can the people expect from you coming soon, man?
Well, I have a couple books coming in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll definitely announce those. I have some audio projects coming out, and a couple companies that I've been working on. So we'll probably be announcing some of our services in the next few months or so. But I'm also have a show. It's called Head in the Game. It's going to be a podcast type visual show where we discuss with men and women how they maintain their mental strength and balance. So we'll just have conversations about love, life, and overcoming.
There we go. I can't wait to hear it, man, and watch it and be a part of it, man. If you want your thought to be the random thought of the week, make sure you email us at randomthoughtswithjulito@gmail.com. Follow us at Random Thoughts, the podcast on IG, and follow the Patreon for all exclusive content at patreon.com/Random Thoughts with Julito. That was another episode of Random Thoughts with Julito, the podcast. Again, Rob, my brother, thank you so much. Send your love to your family for me, your son. Hope to see you soon, my brother, in person, physically, when we don't have to social distance and be 6 feet apart, man. So much love to you, my brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate you, bro.
Of course, brother. Thank you for having me, man.
You already know.
Congrats, man.
Thank you, bro. And you gotta come back soon, my brother. You gotta come back soon.
Anytime.
There we go, my brother. There we go. Thank you, man. And that was another episode. See y'all soon, man.